or taken by script kiddie from experienced programmers.
So what is the objective? What does the malware do?
It depends on the objective of the hacker.
Yeah, just say one objective. It can harm. Does the malware without harming a system? Do this type of malware exist?
Usually it always harms the system.
That's why it's called access.
So it depends on the types of harm it does on your system. You can find a malware that doesn't harm, it doesn't, let's say, affect files, it doesn't affect, let's say, the data itself. But for instance, it is an annoying software. Okay, sometimes you do have an application, that a malware application that is installed on your computer, and it is annoying. That means it will just display advert. Okay, for instance, from let's say every few seconds you do have a pop-up window of advert appearing on your desktop. Okay, so this doesn't harm the system itself, but it is annoying. Okay, operation. So it is, let's say, one of the type of malware that you can find within, let's say, any system. So just to give, let's say, a broad definition of a malware, you can say malware is a software, say, that is intrusive. For instance, it is annoying in its operation. What does work? It can perform any action. It can perform any activity without the knowledge or, let's say, authorization of the system's owner itself. Okay, and this has been, let's say, adopted by many criminals or hackers in order just to gain information about the victim or to commit any other act that are related for instance, financial gain or destroying data, sniffing on the data, getting personal data. Okay, and when we talk about a malware, it includes all the types of, for instance, viruses, Trojan, spyware, adware, ransomware, rootkit. All those types can be categorized as, let's say, under the umbrella of the malware. Okay, we can find also, for instance, let's say, among the activity that can be done also is, for instance, to commit a fraud, as we mentioned, for instance, to steal, let's say, financial bank details or bank card details about someone, okay, and just to do, let's say, to access his account and steal money, for instance, okay, to send spam, for instance, to steal, as I mentioned, personal information as well, okay. And people or the programmers, they develop malware to do some, for instance, to attack browsers and track websites visited, for instance. Okay, for instance, you do have, that's why you get, for instance, in order to, from time to time, when you access a website, for instance, and search, for instance, for something, okay, you will have, in the next browsing, you will have those adverts that are, let's say, displayed on your on your browser based on your last, let's say, search or last preferences and what you have looked in the internet in the last browsing session, for instance. Okay, it can affect system performance. Sometimes you will find this is one of, let's say, the symptoms that you can say whether you have a malware, because usually the malware are hidden. You cannot discover them unless you say, for instance, you run an antivirus and anti-malware software in order to detect their existence. But sometimes some symptoms can be, we're going to see later, there are some symptoms that are indicators of the existence of virus or worm or malware. Okay, among them, sometimes you do have the performance of your computer is decreasing, for instance. You see that your PC is, despite your PC has, let's say, a memory, it does have a CPU, power CPU, but it's still slow in, let's say, in connecting to the internet or in responding and so on. So these are, let's say, one of the signs that can be that can, let's say, tells you that there is something unusual or some malware are or one or many are inside your system. For instance, sometimes you do have those malware are written by people to cause hardware failure, for instance, okay, and to shut down the device itself, to erase the whole hard disk, for instance. Okay, you can find people writing those malware to steal personal information, as we mentioned. Okay, also you can have, for instance, people are writing malwares to use your computer or to use that infected system to be, let's say, to attack other, let's say, computers. Okay, and also you have those spam inboxes with advertising email. You will see, you will receive by accessing your email. They will send you emails about the advertising, and there are many, let's say, usage of those malware. These are just, let's say, the restricted, let's say, list of, let's say, how those malware are, or what is the purpose of writing those malware. That's why here, just to mention, let's say, the legality, malware's legality is to show you that in some countries, specifically in the US, for instance, the malware is considered as a crime. Okay, there are many legal and let's say from the government, okay, knows that, for instance, they consider, for instance, as using malware or attacking devices by malware, it is considered as an offense. Okay, there is another act, legal legislation, for instance, it might get, for him, the hacker or the attacker who uses, for instance, malware attack, he can get up to 10 years, for instance, for his first offense. And it is considered in another state, it is considered on its own as a crime, just by using malware. It's not just, let's say, something that people will play and create malware and send those malware on the net. Okay, it is considered as an offense, it is considered as a crime that will lead to, let's say, a prison punishment for those people who are using malware. Okay, now in terms of the types of malware, as we mentioned, there are many types of malware or many types of programs that can be categorized or under the umbrella of malware. Okay, we do have, for instance, viruses. Okay, when I talk of viruses, anyone, Shabab? What is a virus, Shabab? Anyone, guys?
Yes, we can.
So what is the, any idea?
فيروس ممكن اللي زي المالور بس انه ينتشر، يعني ينتشر زي يحاول اذا سيطر على الماشين هذه يحاول ينقل الماشين الثاني.
Okay, yes. For the virus, it is the code, it is a program, okay, that people write, okay, just, and that the piece of code or piece of software, okay, will spread on from one machine to another machine. How it does spread? It will attach itself to a file. Okay, by attaching itself to a file, it will spread from one machine to another machine. Okay, you do have, for instance, it is attached to XYZ file, and when you copy that file, you take that file and send it by email, or for instance, use USB to transfer that file from one computer to another computer. At that moment, that virus will spread. It will not spread by itself, okay, but it will spread by, let's say, attaching itself to a specific file, and that virus will be activated if that file is accessed. Okay, once you access the file, you double click on that file, that means you are activating the attached virus to that file. Okay, in contrary to the worm, for the worm, it is, as we call it, it is a self-replicating program. Okay, it doesn't need to be, let's say, to be attached to a file. It doesn't need to be double clicked or opened. Okay, by itself, it will replicate from one computer to another computer. It has, for instance, the possibility to look at your, let's say, contact within your email, for instance. and it will send itself to all your emails, contact, and so on. Okay. Sometimes you do have a worm, okay, that it does have on its, let's say, that worm will contain some, let's say, Trojan or rootkit or any other type of malware. So that means like you have something that is replicating, like you do have a malware, okay, like a cover, and inside it you do have a virus. Okay, so it's like a mixture of, let's say, that worm with a virus. Okay, inside it, it will replicate automatically, and it will just put those viruses on those replicated systems. Spyware, it is a type of malicious software that is, say, designed to collect and report information or private information about, for instance, the user activities. For instance, when you access websites, some specific website, and you access some, let's say, specific website for buying or looking, searching for some items, okay, this will spy on your activity, and based on that activity, it will be sent to, let's say, to the people or to the organization or company that has defined that spyware in order just to analyze your activity within the, let's say, the browsing, okay, and they might use that information to sell that information to other company, or for instance, they might use that information to send you some specific advert based on your activities, okay, and all this type of activity that is happening using the spyware, okay, it is without the knowledge or the consent of the user, okay, without your knowledge, without your consent, they are recording your activity. Adware, using that spyware, you have that adware, okay, this adware are specifically used to display adverts, okay, on your system, okay, in terms of, you do have sometimes, you do have a lot of pop-up screens appearing on your browser, okay, and these are related as called adware, and they are, as we mentioned, they are deployed with usually with the spyware, okay, based on your activity that has been taken by a spyware, you will be bombarded by those specific ads, okay, because it is based, will be, and usually those adware are based on your, let's say, habit on search, or as we call it, users search habit. You are always searching, for instance, for a flight, okay, you are always browsing, let's say, for instance, touristic sites in different country. So that information was taken by spyware, and based on that information, you will get adware on your, let's say, ability, on your, let's say, last activities, or you prefer the activities within the internet. We can have scareware as well. Anyone has an idea about the scareware, Shabab?
No, doctor, I think this is the first time I heard of it.
Have you ever, even for instance, sometimes what you do have, sometimes you get, for instance, a message, okay, saying, or you can have a pop-up window saying your machine is infected by XYZ, let's say, a virus or a Trojan or malware or worm, for instance, and you need to purchase ABC software in order to be, let's say, in a safe side. Okay, it's like they will let's say send you a message that will put you in, that will scare you of being, for instance, let's say, a victim of a virus, in order just to push you to buy some specific let's say software in order to defend you against those malware, for instance. It is a type of tactics that will just manipulate the user into just to make them believe that they need to download that application or to buy that application or buy malicious whatever software, okay, because you are scared about being, for instance, hacked. Like, for instance, someone who will send you a message, okay, or let's say by email, telling you, for instance, your computer has been we are XYZ, for instance, organization, and your computer was under attack by ABC virus or malware, and it is, let's say, it is advisable to download this type of software that will, for instance, help you to eliminate that virus or that worm or whatever the type of attack. By the end, it's like they are tricking the user, okay, and scanning the user until he will go and buy those, let's say, fake antivirus or whatever the software they are going to buy. And usually this can be you can find it, let's say, most of, let's say, the scareware can be used by, let's say, by using social engineering. Okay, we see people are accessing or sending you messages in your Facebook, for instance, and you can have those messages, and they just like an announce or a news, and they will tell you if you download this application, you will be safe. Okay, Trojan, Shabab? Anyone? Trojan?
Trojan is like a backdoor. So you inject a backdoor inside a file, then you make the victim install it on his device. Then
Yes.
then that backdoor will take a place as an admin inside the device, and you can control it fully, I mean, from A to Z.
Yeah, for instance, sometimes you do have, let's say, a website, okay, and the website, when you see that website, it looks like an innocent website, doesn't have anything on it. But in the behind, okay, the malware is running on behind, let's say, that's a website, for instance, okay? So once you, let's say, you open that website or you download, let's say, for instance, you want to download, for instance, a calculator application, okay? You can find a calculator application that is available on the net, for instance, and it does what you want, okay? It does, let's say, for instance, it does the operations of calculations. But when you run it, okay, there is a code, there is a program that will run as well, okay? It's like you are hiding, okay, something malicious behind something innocent, okay? And you will run it, you will install that software, and that software usually, okay, does have what is known as a payload. Payload, that is the program that will do, for instance, the unwanted activity within your computer, for instance, okay? For the rootkit, as we mentioned last time, rootkit is, let's say, another type of, let's say, malware that will help to, let's say, keep the virus or whatever the type of malware hidden, okay? It's like another level of hiding, let's say, those viruses or worm or spyware, but just, for instance, changing the name of that malware into a file system name and so on, in order just to evade being detected by an antivirus, for instance. Okay, we have already talked about spyware. Okay, these are some, let's say, which is non-R point-to-point network, where you can find, let's say, how you can be infected, okay, by spyware. You have point-to-point network, or you have direct communication or chatting between devices in social media. As an email attachment, you can have physical access using, for instance, USB or whatever, let's say, disk. Browser defects, problem with the browser itself. You have freeware, those software that can be downloaded. Okay, and this is why it is very important sometimes when you search for some specific software, okay, and you want to search for a free download, okay, you have to be careful that what you are downloading is a genuine application, it is a genuine software, not because there are plenty of software that looks like a genuine, but they are, let's say, they contains in their, let's say, package, they do have viruses and malware. So that's why it is very important to, when you try to access the freeware, to be careful that these are, let's say, correct devices. Sometimes what you do have a common way to place, and this is an example of where, let's say, you will see that those people who are providing software or free software, okay, they will attach with the software some malwares, and most of people, they don't, when they, for instance, when they look for some specific application on the net for free to be downloaded. Okay, they just start by downloading that application and start installing the application without reading. They are quickly next without reading anything. Okay, and if you can say, this is an example. If you can see here, for instance, it says here add CC cleaner toolbar. Okay, and you know, sometimes it is already checked. And what you just when you install that, let's say, software, you just install or follow the next, and this will be installed without, let's say, even, let's say, from the point of view of the guy who provided you, let's say, with this software, who made that software available on the net. Okay, from let's say from his side, he is protected, because when you install that program, okay, that box was ticked and you didn't untick that box. Okay, if you don't want to install those add-on, for instance, and attach them to your browser, you have to untick that box. Okay, and most of the people do that mistake. They don't read. Okay, they just click next in order just to install everything, and they will, let's say, be annoyed by those unwanted, let's say, add-on or let's say adware in their browser. So it is very important to look at those what you are installing. We already talked about adware, scareware, ransomware. Shabab, what is ransomware?
It's same as a malicious software where you ask the victim for a ransom or money.
But how? Why the people will pay you?
Locking down their system, or you know, you basically close their system so they can't access it until they pay, for example, a certain amount of money to purchase a software they provide.
Usually for, yes?
Yeah, that's basically it.
Usually for the ransomware, it will target the data. Okay, here we talk about users data hostage. That means you will hold the data of that organization by encrypting that data. Okay, you access, let's say, a server of a company. Okay, and you access their data and you encrypt that data. That company will no longer have the possibility of accessing their data. Even they own the data, but they don't have access to it. Why? Because it has been encrypted. Okay, specifically when you talk about, for instance, hospital, for instance, files, hospital data, okay, or insurance company data, their data is the asset of that company. If they lose that data, they will bankrupt. Okay, so that's why they tend to pay the attacker whatever they ask, because they need that data in order, just like you take that attacker will take the data as a hostage by encrypting that data, and they will not decrypt it unless you pay them a ransomware. This is what they call, let's say, a ransomware attack. Okay, so you have the victim must pay the money to the attacker in order just to, for the exchange, to give you the decryption key in order just to decrypt your data. As a way of defending against ransomware, okay, install and maintain anti-malware software. You have to be up to date. Apply latest patches to your operating system and all the software you do have. Back up your data and store it in somewhere, which you, in some devices, which are on another device which is not connected to the network. Okay, because if it is connected, that means it will also be let's say, attacked. So just from time to time, do the backup and disconnect that machine in order just to make it safe. In order, if you are under a ransomware attack, at least you do have a backup of your data. Okay, restrict files from running in data folders. So you try to just not to run files or applications where you do have data, because those applications, these are, let's say, the malware that will, let's say, take your data as a hostage and not use the remote desktop, okay, protocol in order just to access your machines remotely, because it might be, let's say, one of the reasons where people or the attacker can gain access to your data. As a target, when we talk about the malware targets, most of, let's say, the malware targets are credit card data, because it does have an asset, it does have a value. They can target passwords installed on the system, for instance, personal information, and the data itself. Whenever you do have devices that are dedicated for storing data, like a file server, okay, these are, let's say, the most targeted information and devices by any type of malware, because they are considered as an asset for that organization, and it is worth to gain access to those data or to those devices. For the virus, we have already mentioned what is a virus. It is a piece of software. Okay. Usually, when you talk about a virus, as a general, it represents any type of malware we have specified. Okay. And as we said, it spreads from one system to another system. Okay. It is activated only when the file is accessed. Okay. And once it is activated, it will execute the code that has been written for that specific purpose within that virus. In terms of the type of viruses we can have, okay, we do have what is known as a logic bombs virus. Okay, this type of virus, okay, it will be hidden within the system, okay, and it will not be activated unless there is an event happening. This is what it has been written in let's say, with the virus code. Okay, let's say that virus will not, let's say, if we attach or relate the event by a specific time, let's say on the 18th of October, okay, if the calendar, or let's say the computer will display the date as 18 October, for instance, okay, that virus, because we do have such event is happening or has happened, so that virus will activate. Okay, this is what is known as a logic bomb, or will execute. Another type of, let's say, viruses, which is, let's say, very dangerous viruses, which are called polymorphic. Polymorphic, these are the type of virus that keep changing their pattern. Okay, sometimes you do have a piece of code, or let's say a virus, that will change its pattern maybe every half an hour, every 20 minutes. Okay, it keeps changing. By keeping its pattern changing, it will try to evade being detected by an antivirus, specifically if the antivirus is based on the pattern of the, let's say, on the pattern way. That means by having that virus changing itself, okay, let's like, for instance, it will change the encryption method. Okay, it does have a code that will apply, or that will, let's say, let that virus to mutate itself and to change itself, for instance, from one encryption algorithm, one encryption method to another encryption method, and so on. Okay, so this is what you know as a polymorphic. It will change its shape. Multi-viruses, multi-party viruses. Here we talk about, let's say, multiple attack vector. That means you do have a virus. It will not just attack, let's say, for instance, a hard disk, or it does have as objective to attack memory, for instance. It will have, let's say, it will play on many, let's say, part of your system. That virus, if it is activated, it will attack memory, it will attack hard disk, it will attack your users within your system, and so on. So it does have, let's say, it will attack your system from different perspectives. It's not only dedicated for specific, let's say, a section within your system. It will have multiple attack vectors. We do have what is known as macrovirus. Okay, for the macrovirus, it will used by a macro language. Does anyone has an idea about macro language, Shabab?
Yes.
Any example?
Yes, it's like you are injecting macro code inside a Word file, and inside the Word file, if you edit, if you make the Word file editable by clicking on some button, then the macro file يعني راح يشتغل يعني will turn on and your computer will be hacked.
Yes, sometimes, for instance, most of the macro, when you open, for instance, an Excel file, okay, sometimes you do have, when you open Excel file, you have a pop-up window that will take you enable macro or disable macro. And usually these are Visual Basic programs or code that are written, okay, to run inside, let's say, for instance, another software like an Excel application. Okay, when you run an application Excel, for instance, instead if I do, usually you write those macro, okay, macro application or small programs in order to help you to do daily tasks. For instance, if I am clerics or I do have my job dictates that I will have to do the same operations every day, for instance, and it is complicated operation that, for instance, I do have 100 steps to do the operation every day. Instead of repeating those steps every day, what I will do, I will write a routine. Like, for instance, you will write a routine to display, for instance, a list in order, in the order of some specific field within my data, and that field will be calculated using some specific formula. Okay, instead of doing such things every day, the same thing I have to repeat it every day, okay, in a manual manner, what I will do, you will just automate that task by writing a program that will do all those stuff. Okay, so whenever I open, for instance, my Excel file, okay, that macro will run automatically and do all the operations, and I do have the result calculated. I don't have to do it manually. This is, let's say the importance of using the macro. And attackers will take that advantage of the existence of the macro language to write, let's say, those harmful programs. Whenever you open, for instance, Excel, that macro will be activated and it will, for instance, activate a malware or virus and damage your system. Okay, these are known as macro viruses.
Because Doctor, macro viruses are detectable by most of the operating systems now.
Good, very good. That's why, as I mentioned, that's why when you do have, for instance, a software on application, okay, that asks you, for instance, and that does have some macro attached to it, okay, you will have, by security system tells you whether you want to disable or enable the macro. See, it's up to you, because if you know the existence of macro and you know that they are not harmful, you can, let's say, click on enable, because you need to activate them. You need to run those macro program. Okay, if you don't know them, you just disable in order just to prevent them from running. Okay, hoaxes, these are not, let's say, really a virus. Okay, but they will put people, or they will push people to do some action. Okay, it's like you send an email or telling people to download this application. If you don't do that, you will lose this and this, or you call people and scare them and all this stuff. These are, let's say, types of, let's say, it's like we call, it's like infecting the moral side of the users of the system rather than the system itself. As prevention, okay, virus prevention, of course, educating people at the first instance, it is your first line of defense, to educate people about how to deal with unknown files, unknown attachment files. In case of they discover that they have some specific symptoms of the existence of malware or viruses, how they can deal and do what is, let's say, the proper, let's say, guidance for dealing with such unwanted, for instance, files. Okay, installing antivirus, anti-malware as well, it is very important, and of course applying update to your operating system, patches, and for your applications. Okay, just to recap for the wall, okay, we said it is a self-replicating piece of software. Okay, they do not require a host, they don't need to be attached to a file, which are known as self-contained by themselves. Okay, they don't need you an intervention to double click on them to be activated. Okay, they replicate rapidly, they consume bandwidth resources. Okay, they can be transmitted from one system to another system, and they can hold on themselves a payload or a program like a virus to harm the system. Okay, in order just to it's like, as we mentioned, they are combined, they be combined. Okay, they do have a virus and they are self-replicating, so that virus will spread, because by the definition of the virus doesn't replicate itself, it doesn't spread by itself. You need to take it, you need to move it from one system in another system. So another genius, let's say, method by hackers is just to put that, let's say, virus inside the worm. Okay, and the worm will be let's say translated and it will replicate rapidly by itself. So you end up having virus replicated into various systems. We have already talked about antivirus, firewalls. This is the definition for the worm. Okay, you can go through, for instance, for the differentiation between, or difference between a worm and a virus. Okay, a virus is a file that cannot be spread to other computer unless you infect, let's say, that file is infected and replicated with the help, let's say, of, let's say, a worm, or by replicating that file itself, contrarily to the worm that is self-replicated. Okay, usually files are known as, for instance, they do have the extension for the virus.com, they just hide themselves. And they do have, sometimes you do have, for instance, .exe.doc. Okay, at the end, in order just to evade being detected by an antivirus by adding extra extension to the file. And that's why sometimes when you do have .zip and you want to, let's say, upload .zip into say a drive, or into, for instance, to send it by by email, okay, it will not accept, because usually they tend, let's say, those viruses tend to be let's say combined and compressed into .zip file, and so on. Okay, these are, I'll let you just read those differences. Now for the Trojan. Okay, when we talk about Trojan, which are, let's say, part of the malware, okay, as we mentioned. Okay, there are many types of Trojan. Okay, you can have, for instance, a remote access Trojan. That means you install a Trojan inside the system in order just to remotely access and control the system itself. Okay, there are remote access, we call them remote access Trojan or RAT. Okay, you do have data sending. Okay, you will have a Trojan that does have, let's say, the objective of, let's say, collecting data from the device it is installed and sending the data, for instance, keystroke. Okay, whatever, let's say, the user will type on his keyboard, it will be collected and sent to the attacker. Okay, they can be destructive, they can distract your device, they can harm and delete the whole hard disk, they can provoke the denial of service, they can be used as a proxy. When you talk about, they can be used as proxy sometimes without your knowledge. Okay, without your knowledge. Okay, it will allow, for instance, the attacker to use the victim system. Okay, the attacked or the targeted machine to be to act like a proxy server. Okay, what that means, a proxy server? That means they will, for instance, use your computer, okay, to be as, let's say, a third or a way to attack other devices. Okay, that means the user will not attack ABC device directly. Okay, and they will use your system to perform to do this their unwanted activity. Okay, like in, let's say, in distributed DOS, where you do have those botnets that are used by the attacker in order just to hide their and to spoof their IP address, for instance. Okay, and they will use that victim system to carry out other criminal act or criminal attack by, let's say, which, let's say, make locating the attackers more difficult. You do have a Trojan FTP or file transfer protocol. Okay, So sometimes there are some types of software that are designed, for instance, to infect a system, your computer, for instance, and your computer will be, if it is infected by this type of Trojan, it will be or it will act like an FTP server. What is meant by an FTP server? What you will have, without your knowledge, okay, the attacker will load your PC or your system with, for instance, let's say music sound or some softwares. Okay, they will load or upload those songs files or video files or let's say applications files into your system. Okay, and it will advert on the net to download some specific song or some specific application. This is the link, and the link will point to your computer. That means your computer is now acting like an FTP server where people are accessing your computer and downloading images or video or songs or whatever without your knowledge, without your consent, without your knowledge. You don't know that your PC is considered as an FTP server. There are some types of Trojan that have this type of, let's say, functionality that will turn the targets and the victims' machines into an FTP server. Sometimes you do have some types of Trojan which are known as security software disablers. That means this type of, let's say, Trojan, they will disable. For instance, they will target a system and go to the security configuration of that system. For instance, they will go to firewall or the antivirus, and they will disable the antivirus. They will disable the firewall. For instance, if you do have an update, okay, you have, for instance, you have automatic update on your computer, for instance, for the operating system, they will just disable that and check that box, for instance. So these are, let's say, the strategy for, let's say, that is taken by an attacker before they can attack your system. They will send you that Trojan and disable all those security configuration in order to go to the next phase of attack, so they can, let's say, calmly attack your device without having any, let's say, defense line in front of them, because they have done their job and they have disabled all those security features that can exist within the targeted system. Okay, Shabab? Now, method to get Trojan onto the system, there are many ways. Okay, for instance, for the function of Trojan, as we mentioned, they can steal data. They can, you can, for instance, during installation of software, okay, you can get those Trojan. You can, when you download or upload the files, there are many functions. Okay, they can, for instance, modify. They can delete files, install keystroke on your device. They can see your screen. Okay, they can see your screen by using those Trojan. They can consume, as we mentioned, for those that are categorized under FTP. That means they will consume your storage space by uploading files into your system. Okay, and they turn your device into an FTP. So that means they will consume your storage. Okay, or they can crash the victim system itself. Okay, so this is the method to get Trojan onto system. Trojan attaches, execute, and that Trojan will open like a backdoor and grant access to the attacker to do some other social engineering. Okay, when you trick people to access some website and email or message or to download or to click on some links, okay, and you will get that Trojan, which is the first step towards attacking that system. Target of Trojan, as we mentioned, financial data, passwords, insider stored. We have already talked about that one. And distribution, they can be distributed through bulletin board system. Okay, when you do have news, specifically here within, let's say, an organization, sometimes within a company, they will have some news inside the news that will be sent to the employees within the company, and they can use that method to attach themselves, and they will be distributed to all employees of that company, for instance, or through floppy disk or USB, that are, let's say, physical devices that you can transport and move from one device to another device. This is, let's say, a list of infected, how you can know, let's say, that you have been infected. Okay, there are many things. Okay, for instance, you do have CD, DVD drawer, opens and closes on itself, for instance. Okay, you can computer screen changes. Okay, it will change, let's say, the screen of the computer, the settings will change of the screen. You do have, for instance, document. You do have a printer that will print document without any reason. Okay, you didn't issue any command for printing. It does have. Okay, you do have, for instance, browser that is redirecting you each time you try to access a website. You will be redirected to another website. Windows color changes, screensaver settings change. The right and left mouse buttons will reverse their function. Okay, the pointer of the mouse disappears. Okay, you will see the pointer will move through the desktop without any explanation.